Hi everyone, it's Allen with Earthglow, and today's video is kind of an oops on my part. So I had released my restock, and as you all know, I love making candles, but the business side of things I do struggle with a bit. So what I'm doing now is making a list of all of the candles that I oversold in my restock, because I need to get them shipped out as soon as possible. So I'm doing an emergency double restock here. And I also decided that I would just go ahead and make more of some of the candles that I wasn't able to make in my last restock for the summer collection. So I'm making a list of the fragrances that I'm going to need to make the candles that I have listed above. And then I'm just grabbing a postal crate and going down to where I keep all my fragrances. And this is my new box of soy wax. So generally the DG boil will hold a whole 45 pounds, and that'll make about 135 or so candles of the 6-ounce candles. And so this is what I actually do when I'm filling up the DG boil. I get a chair and I basically stand on the chair and have my box of wax on another chair, and I just gradually fill it, and the DG boil sits on my kitchen counter. And then I'm just getting it going here, making sure my spout is in the off position, and yep, we are good. And I set it to 181 Fahrenheit, and that will actually get to like 185 when I get the wax. And these are all my supplies and fragrances that I'm going to be using today. I actually decided to make more candles later, so those are some of the fragrances. And what I usually do first before I make any candles is I weigh out all my fragrance oils in these beakers that I have. These are the 250 ml. And this fresh odor eliminator that I'm about to use is probably my absolute favorite fresh scent. I sell it as my By Felicia candle, and it is so lovely. It's really great too for sometimes people with pets will enjoy it, and it's really great for canceling out any scents that you don't want in your home. But I also just think it smells like a beautiful fresh, clean fragrance. And then I'm measuring out this caramel popcorn next. And caramel popcorn is a fragrance that I first purchased and I didn't really like it. I didn't know what I would actually end up doing with it, even though it had good reviews. I was like, I don't really know how to make this work for me. But then I thought I could sell it as Disney Boardwalk, because it really smells like a waffle cone or like caramel popcorn, but mixed in with all those other scents that you get when you're at Walt Disney, just on the boardwalk. And then when that idea occurred, this fragrance, it just became a whole new thing. And that's something I really want to underscore, that a lot of times fragrances, if you can come up with a creative way of branding it that is effective for your audience, you can take pretty much anything and make it into something that's really successful. But what I end up doing after I measure out my oils is I always just clean the bottles with a little bit of like window cleaner or all-purpose cleaner, just because the fragrance, it does usually end up getting a little bit on the caps. And I just put them all right back into the postal crate. And then I will take all of these oils back into my basement to store them in the dark in a filing cabinet, like a wall of filing cabinets where I have them all. And if any of you do want like a full fragrance tour, just let me know and I'm happy to add that to my list of videos. But now I'm just wondering how to make my Lavender Zen candle. I couldn't remember what my blend was, so I scrolled into my Google app, my Google Docs app, where I keep all my fragrance recipes. And I just have my pouring pitchers on the floor here. I don't have a big enough table, so this is kind of like my setup. I have all my oils on the table, and then my DG boil is up a little bit higher on the counter so that I can pour it onto the scale. And then I'm just measuring out some additional oils that I thought I would go ahead and just restock too. And I don't think I had these all on the list. But next we're gonna go up to my attic, and this is where I keep my tins. So this is my under construction candle studio slash kitchen, and yeah, I'm still working on painting the walls and getting everything organized. I also do my shipping in here, and yeah, I did not want to show this to you all, but I thought you might want to see kind of behind the scenes more. The cabinets are in the process of like being chosen which color I'm gonna paint them, and I am still working on having my tile guy finish the tile. But this is what I'm working with. And so my giant DG boil is there. I pour all my fragrances on this table, and that's where my scale is. And then the whole counter area is filled with my tints. And I actually end up adding even more than you see now. So I made a total of 144 candles in this video. But yeah, I'm so embarrassed that my kitchen is still under construction, but I really wanted you all to see what I'm working with right now. And that's just life. It's never perfect, right? It's always a work in progress. And now I'm getting another pouring pitcher ready so that once this pitcher gets to 50 ounces, I can go ahead and quickly switch out the pitchers. And what I will typically do is get two going at once so that I can stir in my fragrance oils at basically between 185 and 186, 187-ish, I would say. But when I switch them out like that, there's very little time in between this pitcher reaching 50 ounces and the other pitcher having just been filled. So I usually am able to get the wax within a degree or two of each other, and then I'm able to save myself a lot of time too by mixing in my fragrances and stirring them for 2 minutes at the exact same time. But anyways, that's just what's kind of worked for me, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that when you're first starting out because it can be a lot to keep track of and kind of overwhelming. It definitely took me a few months of getting comfortable with the DG boil, even after I'd been making candles for 4 years before I started, mixing two pitchers simultaneously. But anyways, I am just getting ready to stir in my fragrances after taking the temperatures on those and making sure that my wax was at that magical number of 185. And I'm stirring those, and then I'm just getting my next pitcher ready to go here. And what I am going to be doing is getting all of the pouring pitchers that I own full of wax, and then I'm going to be setting them off to the side on these towels, these gray towels that you see on the kitchen counter. And those towels just prevent my countertop from getting damaged at all from the hot pouring pitchers, because 185 is still pretty warm to be sitting on those countertops. But anyways, I'm just getting all of these pitchers full, and then I'm also keeping an eye on the ones that are getting the coolest. And it's usually about 20 to 25 minutes before they get as low as I would like for them to possibly get before I pour. And I'm also keeping a tally of which scents are going to be ready first so that I can pour those ones into candles and have them labeled in the order of the pouring pitchers. So my very front pouring pitchers, I'm making the scent cards for first, and then I'm just kind of going in order. And that way I know exactly which fragrances are in the candles without even having to smell them. And that just helps because as they're curing, sometimes it can get a little confusing if you have several scents that are somewhat similar. And as I'm pouring these candles, I like to start from the front when the pitcher is the fullest because there's about nine. Well, the pitcher holds enough to fill 9 of these 8-ounce tins, 6-ounce candles. So there's 54 ounces of wax in there, and it's so much easier to control when you start at the front. And then as less wax is in the container, it's easier to do those ones that are in the back. Now, if you have the luxury of being able to just do like 2 rows of candles, that is so wonderful because you don't even have to worry about kind of balancing things and doing it with all these rows as I am here with limited space. This is going to be my very first scent. We are doing sea salt orchid candles, and I do like to keep a paper towel just so that way after I've poured, you kind of get a feel for it when it's starting to come down the pitcher. But generally, every candle or two, I will try to wipe the pouring pitcher so that way not too much wax builds up and starts dripping down the sides. And then eventually it will just cause a little bit of a spill if you don't continually wipe that pouring pitcher. And this next one here is our Mint Mojito. And this is a new fragrance for me. This is actually my very first time making it in a full batch. But I did really like my test candles on this one. And this is one of my 2 new summer scents this year. So we'll see how my clients like this one. Just trying to go nice and slow and steady. I can't tell you how many times when I've made candles in a rush, I've created so much more work for myself because I poured too fast and just made a mess. And then you have all that cleanup to do. So I generally I never get through making candles without spilling something. But I try to just minimize it by pouring a little bit slower. And I think I've gotten a little bit better at it, but I definitely still have that tendency to want to just dump it all in there. And but then after I do have that initial amount, I will go back in and just top off any that appear to be a little bit lower. But my fill indicator is usually that little line. So I try to fill them. These tins that I get from Aztec and the Flaming Candle are really nice because they have that line where you can kind of be really consistent. I have in general found that 464 does give me pretty smooth tops after I pour, and I generally will pour between 125 and 145, ideally between 135 and 145. But yeah, I'm surprised because I know that a lot of times it does cause rough tops, and I will sometimes get slightly rough tops after the first pour, and I'll try to show some of these at the end. Once these candles are hard, you'll see that some of the scents have rougher tops than others, but in general, it's a pretty good single pour wax for me, I have found in general. But sometimes humidity can affect that. I'm curious if any of you work with 464, if you find that fragrances or humidity can affect how smooth your candle is after that initial pour. Just adding on the wick bars now. And these I do get from Candle Science. You can also get them from Amazon. But I have found the ones from Candle Science do work just a little bit better. They're a little bit more consistent with not having the little holes obstructed. But I do find these a little easier to clean than the other ones that have the hole in the center. Just printing out my labels here. And this is one of my favorite parts of candle making. I love, love, love all the colors and images on the labels and seeing the candles come to life with all the scent images. Got my top labels. And then this is the next day. And I'm about to cut these wicks, and you're about to see the final effect here after the wicks have been trimmed. And I'm going to try to zoom you in on certain parts where you can see that little bit of bumpiness on the Golden Girls. I don't know if it picks up on camera, but it's not quite as smooth as some of the other fragrances are. And I do find for me personally that fragrance does affect how smooth, yeah, you can see on those bloom ones as well, or the Lavender Zen. They're not quite as smooth. What I'm doing here is just doing an initial check for any spills, and I identified this one. And so I'll just wipe it down with a paper towel, usually just a dry paper towel, but sometimes you can use rubbing alcohol, or you can use a little bit of all-purpose cleaner if you want. And just getting that wax off. And this is what I usually do before I put my labels on, is I just do kind of an initial check of all the jars, because it really prevents a lot of time later to get any amounts of spilled wax totally clean from the jars before doing any of the labeling. And then I'll also make sure that I clean the countertop surface, because sometimes if you don't, you can put your warning labels on and you'll find on your countertop that you ruin your warning label, because if there's still a bit of spill on there, that can happen. So just kind of going through and checking all of them. Usually what I do with my warning labels is I'll set them out on the counter, and I do use the matte all-purpose, the weather-resistant labels. And my crystals and everything are all ready, so I've got those all prepped on the tops with the colors and the stones that I want for each candle. And then I'm going to go through, and after pressing those in, just use my creme brulee torch. But if you do use this method, I would highly recommend eye protection. And then just grinding a little bit of golden lepidolite mica on those. And this is the final product. Oh my goodness. And I'm going to show you what they look like too once I put the lids on. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, comment "fueled by candles" down below, and I'll know that you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for watching and for making candles with me. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell so that you don't miss anything from me. I'm sending each one of you peace, love, and light, and wishing all of you happy candle making.